We've got an end to the government shutdown. We've got a Missouri conference on agriculture. We have soybean variety testing results. We got beef news, foreign beef news. We got a major agriculture company's earnings report. Hey, no more pomp and circumstance. This isn't a Randy Macho Man Savage entrance. No, you're listening to the Farm Show. That's Farm and Ranch, Missouri, right here on Westplex Talk 1045. No pomp and circumstance. Let's get right into it. And we will start with the end to the federal government shutdown. Brownfield's Carah Hart was at the Missouri Governor's Conference on Agriculture held this week in Jefferson City. We've talked about it for several weeks now. Carah was there, and she had a conversation with Jim Wiesmeyer. I'll read you a few snippets from Carah's piece about the shutdown and what it means. Carah writes, "The U.S. government shutdown has ended, and an ag policy analyst says it will take time for business at the USDA to get back to normal. Quote, I think their initial focus is on the food stamp or the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, that's SNAP, and the Women, Infants, and Children Program. And that takes a lot of time to make sure that money is finally getting back out there." Carah continues, then he says the focus will be on reports. The USDA said on Thursday the weekly export sales reports would start being released again today, starting with the export sales data from September 25th. Export sales reports are expected to be caught up by Christmas, and you can view the schedule by going to Carah's piece at brownfieldagnews.com and clicking on the link that says View the Schedule. Carah continues, USDA also says any flash sales that were made during the shutdown will be released alongside the November USDA report, expected yesterday. That would be Friday. So I'm reading this here on Saturday. Carah's piece was actually filed on Thursday. Carah continues, Wiesmeyer also says some workers were let go at the USDA due to the shutdown, and USDA will have to rehire workers. Carah continues, President Trump signed the continuing resolution Congress passed on Wednesday that would restore funding for USDA for the entire fiscal year. Wiesmeyer says a full year appropriation was a smart move. And here's his quote, now we won't be at the mercy of the January 30th cutoff date. Carah continues, the continuing resolution also prevents a lapse in other Farm Bill provisions, extends the U.S. Grain Standards Act, and could also provide more funding for state meat inspections. Missouri Ag Director Chris Chen tells Brownfield she is awaiting more details. Here's the quote from Director Chen. We have a waiting list of processing businesses that would like to open in the state of Missouri, so any extra funding that we can have to help support those businesses is a welcome sight. Carah wraps up with pointing out that Brownfield interviewed Wiesmeyer and Chen at the Missouri Governor's Ag Conference in mid-Missouri. Again, that piece was brought to us by Carah Hart from Brownfield Ag News, and you can find it at brownfieldagnews.com. Now, that wasn't the only key piece of information that the folks at Brownfield brought to us from the Missouri Ag Governor's Conference. The Missouri Governor's Conference on Agriculture. Carah wrote another piece focused on SNAP and Governor Mike Kehoe. Here's what Carah wrote. Now that the USDA is fully funded for the new fiscal year, nutrition program benefits will resume. Missouri Governor Mike Kehoe says providing full SNAP benefits remains a top priority. Here's the quote from the governor. Earlier this week, a partial SNAP payments started coming forward, so I know USDA will work very hard to make sure that that gets back out into Missourians and the rest of the country's hands. I'm glad the government's open. I won't read the full piece from Carah here. She has the actual audio clips of her conversation with the governor. And once again, you can find that by going to brownfieldagnews.com. Well, with the shutdown ended, that's been dominating news in the ag market and has been on the minds of folks in our area. But another thing that we're looking at this time of year are harvest yield results. And the University of Missouri has some data for us. First, just a little bit of background on the soybean performance tests. Here's what Mizzou says. This report is a contribution of the Division of Plant Science and Technology, University of Missouri College of Agriculture, Food and Natural Resources. The work was supported by fees from companies and organizations submitting varieties for evaluation. Soybeans were first included in the University of Missouri's variety testing program in 1973. Mizzou goes on to say, the large number of varieties available makes selection of a superior variety difficult. Hey, that's not much of a newsflash. To select intelligently, producers need a reliable, unbiased, up to date source of information that will permit valid comparisons among available varieties. The objective of the University of Missouri's performance testing program is to provide this information. The tests are conducted under as uniform conditions as possible. Small plots are used to reduce the chance of soil and climatic variations occurring between the variety plots. Results obtained should aid the individual grower in judging the relative merits of the commercial soybean varieties available in Missouri today. So, as we look at the testing program, the testing site closest to our broadcast area is in Truxton, Missouri. Now, I'll just tick through some of the leading varieties in this particular program, what their maturity group is, and what the yield was for these small group tests. And again, this is coming from the 2025 variety testing program at the University of Missouri. Maturity Group 3, Central Region, Truxton. We should note too that the planting date was May 15th and the harvest date for all of these varieties was October 7th. The number one Brandon hybrid for yield, AgVenture AV 36B2E, yielded 63.6 bushels. That's maturity group 3.6. The number two hybrid coming in just behind AgVenture was Lakeview Farms, LVF 3472. That, of course, is a 3-4 maturity group. That came in with 62.2 bushels per acre. Third place, Stein Seed, variety 36EH32. That's a 3.6 maturity group. That ticked in just 1/10 of a bushel lower than Lakeview Farms for third place, 62.1 bushels per acre. Coming in fourth, FS High Soy HS 35E50. That is a 3.5 maturity group. That ticked in with 61.7 bushels per acre. Coming in at number five, a return of Lakeview Farms. This time, LVF 3674. That, of course, is a 3.6 maturity. That ticked in at 61.6 bushels per acre. And behind that, just 1/10 of a bushel fewer than Lakeview Farms, Mustang Seeds XF 38725. That, of course, is a 3.8 maturity group. And that was followed closely by another Mustang Seeds variety, 39E926. That, of course, would be a 3.9 maturity group. Followed up, we'll call out two more. Stein Seed, clocking in again, 38EG32, maturity group 3.8, 60.2 bushels per acre. And finally, another Mustang Seeds variety, 35E526, a 3.5 maturity group, clocking in at 60.2 bushels per acre. I think the unique thing about these results from Truxton are that we see a number of well-performing varieties, I should say high-performing varieties, from Benson Hill, the Creve core-based technology company. I'm counting at least a half dozen high-performing varieties coming from Benson Hill. If you're interested in hearing more about these variety trials, I would suggest you check out Missouri Ruralist. That's put together, of course, by the Farm Progress family of publications. Missouri's own Mindy Ward has a piece on Farm Progress called "What Happened to Missouri's Record-Breaking Soybean Crop?" I'll just pull a couple quotes from this, and you can find it at farmprogress.com. Just search for Mindy Ward or search for Missouri. Here's what Mindy said. Missouri's 2025 soybean crop showed promise for record yields, but a late season drought knocked 15 to 20 bushels per acre off potential harvests across much of the state. Here's a quote from Mark Weberg, University of Missouri Senior Research Specialist and coordinator of the MU Variety Testing Program. Heading into August, Missouri probably was going to have the best soybean crop we've ever had, but the rain shut off. Mindy writes, rain timing, not total rainfall, created soybean yield issues for farmers this year. Now, the piece goes on to say, navigating future weather uncertainties may come down to current university research that examines soybean maturity groups and optimal planting windows. Mindy, of course, is referring there to the soybean variety test. Now, there are some regional differences that Mindy points out. The northwest region of Missouri, she describes as the garden spot, with consistent August and September rains. At the Missouri Ag Experiment Station in Rockport, 3 Group 4 varieties reached more than 100 bushels per acre. One tied with the southeast Missouri high of 102.2 bushels per acre. Mindy goes on to detail a few highlights of what happened in some of these tests. And Mindy says, seed size varied across the state as soybean development differed based on moisture availability. So I won't read the rest of this piece for you. Again, you can find it at farmprogress.com. Just search for Missouri or for Mindy Ward. And you can also find a link on that page to the Missouri Variety Testing Program, where you can see results for all the North Central region, including the ones I mentioned from Truxton. Let's go from a huge crop in the state of Missouri, soybeans, to a crop that's only planted on tens of thousands of acres, and that would be hemp. We've given a lot of hemp updates lately, probably because there are some farms in Franklin County that have been experimenting with hemp. Big news in the hemp realm this week as the federal government shutdown ended. There were provisions in the federal spending arrangement that would affect hemp growers. Here's a headline from The Hill, the Washington, D.C. publication. Hemp industry plans next move after Trump signs THC ban. This piece is brought to us by Nathaniel Wexel of The Hill, and I'll just read you 2 paragraphs. The hemp industry is regrouping and gearing up for a significant lobbying blitz following passage of the government funding package that contained a provision they say would outlaw nearly all hemp products. The legislation clarifies the definition of hemp to ban all hemp-derived products containing THC, which were legalized by the 2018 Farm Bill. This seems to be bad news for the hemp growers in Franklin County and throughout our broadcast area. So for an opinion on what this means for the hemp industry in our broadcast area and the entire state of Missouri, we're going to turn to a friend of the show, Eapen Thampy. Eapen's been on our show multiple times talking about the challenges of hemp production in Franklin County and other places in Missouri. And Eapen put together his thoughts immediately upon passage of the government funding package. I'm just going to play a few snippets of this before we go to break to hear what Eapen has to say about legislation and its impact on hemp growers. Now, be advised, There's a little bit of static in Eapen's message here, but we'll play it anyway.
Over the last 24 hours, I think a lot of our industry interests have consolidated, a lot of industry interests from outside hemp, from the hospitality space and the beverage space, and even in the health and wellness and the medical space, I think have consolidated. We've seen a lot of anger and a lot of support from the special needs community, from the veterans groups, and I think that there are going to be a lot of angry people that Washington, D.C. does not understand how to roll in this, how to stake in this. And I think you're going to see kind of a coalescence of interests and kind of a more unified voice for the industry and for consumers and for Americans step up. Right? We anticipate that Congress is going to come back to the marijuana and hemp issue in January and February. Right, so we've been planning actually this for about 3 months now, but we are planning to engage Congress very directly in that after the turn of the year. We're planning fly-ins, we're raising money, we're talking to candidates, we're talking to elected officials, we're talking to public health and public safety stakeholders. We're getting ready for a big fight. And it's a fight that I think, will win. And here's why. One of the lessons I've learned over the last 3 years is that when we show up, in politics, showing up is 90% of the game, right? And when we stick up for ourselves, we win. That's how we've been able to survive being outspent 20, 30 times to 1 in Missouri the last 3 years, right? I remember in 2023, when the first ban hemp bill by MoCan Trade got filed, we had a heck of a fight in the House General Laws Committee, but we killed that bill without a committee vote, right? And we came through in 2024. We had a very difficult fight in 2025. We have an even tougher fight in 2026. But when we show up, when we advocate for ourselves, when we're willing to fight, we win. Right, that's a lesson I take from the last 3 years.
Okay, we're going to wrap it up there. If the static was driving you nuts, my apologies. What you can do is go to Eapen Thampy on YouTube. Eapen goes into a lot more detail. He has 2 videos about the hemp legislation. The first one was immediately on the heels of passage, and then another one that's a little bit more detailed. Again, if you're considering putting a few acres into hemp next year, you will definitely want to hear what Eapen has to say. When we come back for the remainder of the farm show, we're going to talk about beef, and then in C Block, we're going to talk about Bayer's earnings. Maybe what they said about dicamba and glyphosate. Spoiler, definitely what they said about dicamba and glyphosate. You're listening to the farm show on Westplex Talk 104.5. We'll be right back.